Hey there everyone. So this week I had inspiration jump on me. So for the project this week, I'm very excited for what I'm gonna do. So obviously lately I've been in a princess mood. I've been doing a bunch of princess dresses, mainly the before dresses, but I was looking through my fabric stash and I found some fabric that gave me an idea. So this week I'm gonna be doing the Anna Coronation dress from Frozen 1. So this is a bigger project that I've done in a long time. I feel like lately I just haven't been doing something that I've really been like proud of. I've been like, oh, I did it, and then I just, it's done. Like, I feel like I haven't put like tons of work into something lately, and I really wanted to do that with something. So that's the dress that I'm gonna be doing. Oh, that's actually really cute. Want some cat ASMR? So anyway, yeah, so that's what I'm going to be doing this week. So for materials, I did regrettably have to buy some material for this because I didn't have the material that my hyperfixation wanted me to do. So I did have to buy some material. I went up to Walmart and I bought some satin. So they didn't have the greens that I was looking for the skirt. So I just ended up buying white satin and then I dyed the material. So the skirt is very interesting looking at it. It's not just like one, straight kind of thing. It's got depth to it. So what it looks like for the skirt is it's paneled. So it's like pleated, and so you have the outside panels that have the decoration and the lighter greens, and then inside the paneling you have a darker green satin. So I did end up having the dark green satin, which I believe I did thrift, and I did have enough to make 8 panels of. So instead of this skirt being like 10 plus panels, it could only be 8, which was fine. I had plenty enough to go around. And so yeah, that's what the skirt's kind of looking like. So it is gonna be one of the most complex skirts that I've ever made. So and then for the bodice, it does look like a pretty generic bodice. So I think when people usually make this bodice, they use black velvet, but I loathe velvet and also didn't have any or feel like buying any. So what I ended up doing was just getting a black sheet because that would do just fine. And yeah, so for the bodice I'm just gonna use a black sheet, and then I did pick up some clearance satin for the sleeves that I'm gonna be using because I only have like this much of it, but that is enough for the sleeves. So I guess let's just get into the patterns and stuff that I made. So I'll be right back. Let me go grab those patterns. So for the lighter green paneled sheets, pretty much it's cut into 3 sections. So I started off by just drawing out one big triangle and then splitting it into 3 parts. So piece this all together. Pretty much ended up looking kind of like that when it's all together, kind of thing. So I have the left panel, center panel, and the right panel. Yeah, so pretty much I just drew it out and then I said to add seam allowance. I didn't go off of a pattern that was already made, so I made this myself, and I did kind of a math thing. I even got a protractor out to get the angles right. So yeah, that's that panel. And then for the inner darker green panels, I made, it's just like basically the same shape as the other panels, just slightly bigger. So it is this whole piece here. So yeah, that's the skirt panel mess. And then for the bodice, I actually did a different technique than I usually do, which I usually take my corset pattern and I adjust it. But for this, I wanted it to be a well-fitting bodice and I wanted it to work. So I tried a technique that I've never tried before, and that is saran wrapping yourself and then duct taping yourself to get your proper like body shape. And so I did that. And then basically I just drew out the shapes that I wanted on the duct tape, cut it out, and then redrafted the pattern. And that gave me like these lovely pieces here. Pretty much. So that was the technique that I used for the bodice. So yeah, let's start with the skirt because that is the most menacing of the things. So the first thing I had to do was I drafted the patterns and then I cut them out of the white satin. So I wanted to cut those out first because I had to dye those, so I wanted to get those out of the way so I could get into the thing. So I cut out all of the pieces and I separated them into the two sections for coloring. So I needed the two outer pieces to be a lighter sage green and then the middle to be a darker olive-ish green. So I did 2 boiling batches. I actually ended up re-dyeing the lighter panels because when I first dyed them, they turned out a bit like light lime green and I was like, this is not the vibe. So I ended up putting it back into a pot and re-dyeing it with just like a tad bit of brown, and that's what gave it the perfect olive or light sage green color. And then when I was dyeing the darker olive color, I did also add a bit of brown, and that's what gave it that nice color. So once those were all dyed, I hung them up to dry. They were incredibly wrinky and incredibly frayed, so that took a lot of ironing. So once those were all dyed and ironed, I could start sewing them together. So pretty much showing you the process is going to be pretty fast because I'm only going to show you one panel of the 8 that I had to do. I just pinned all the 3 pieces together, sewed them, and then I would iron the seam in so it would look like the outer olive piece was kind of on top. And then once I sewed them, I did pink the edges because, like I said, this was incredibly frayed from dyeing it. So I pinked the edges with my pinking shears, and then I did that to 8 of the pieces. So I'm going to catch you back after all that to tell you what I'm going to do next. Okay, now that all of the 8 panels were sewn together, before I sewed them all together with the green panels, I wanted to first paint them. So what I did was I took the middle template that I had, which ended up being spot on with all my seam allowances and stuff, so I'm pretty proud of that. And I just like drew out the pattern, and then I took an X-Acto knife and I cut it out. And then I literally just like laid it on top of the piece, and then I used a brush to just like blot on top of it, and that was my stencil, and I gave me a nice pattern. Yeah, that took a long time. So I basically just did one color at a time. So I would go through, do all the greens on all the 8 panels, go do all the reds on all the 8 panels, all the yellows, all the pinks, and then the blue dots on all of the panels. So that took quite a long time, but that is pretty much what I did. And this is just like, I'm not sure what it is. It's like stocky brown cardboardy paper, which I think people generally use for patterns. I just use parchment because I like it more. So this is pretty sturdy, and it was a nice reliable stencil for me. So once those were all painted, it was time to cut out the big middle dark green pieces. So again, like I said, I think this was a thrifted green fabric satin that I had, so I was able to get just enough for 8. And then once I cut those out, I pretty much just alternated with the light green painted panels and the dark green panels all the way until I sewed all 16 of them together. And then the important step before pleating all of this is I had to iron them all the right way. So in order for the green panel, the light green panels to stick out, I had to iron them, like, how do you explain this? Like, this is the green fabric, so generally when you iron fabric, you iron the seams out like that so it lays flat, but I had to iron it, so this is the green fabric, this is the dark green. I had to iron it like that so that the panels would stick out and they would naturally fold the right way. So I had to iron all of those, which was a bit of a pill, but I did it. And then after that, then I could pleat the skirt for getting it ready for the waistband. So basically what I did for the pleating was I took the green fabric and I completely pleated it under so that the light green painted panels met, and because that is how her skirt basically is, so it gives it some depth. So I pleated them all together and then I sewed along the top so it would stay, and then I was able to sew the last panels together and then iron that last little pleat and then pleat that last little pleat. And then the skirt was almost ready. And then the last thing I had to do for it was make the waistband. So pretty much just made like a little bias tape, sewed it straight on top. And then instead of, like, this wasn't quite fitting, so I did put a string in the waistband so that I could just like cinch it closed and it would fit. And then after that, I just hemmed it. And then the skirt was finally done. I think that was like a total of 16 hours put into the skirt. So I'm gonna catch you back after all of that. Right, now that the skirt is finally done, it's time to work on the bodice. So for this bodice, like I said, I did duct tape myself to get the proper pattern. And I got my 4 pattern pieces. So this is cut into 4 sections. I have the middle piece, the side front piece, the side back piece, and then the back piece. So I did use the black sheet for this, and I cut out 2 of each so it would be the same outer fabric and lining, and then I did cut out an interfacing to go on the outer fabric because I wanted this to be pretty well structured, so I put out all the stops for this. So yeah, once those were all cut out, I sewed them all together, both the outer fabric and the lining, and then I'm gonna explain a bit of what I did after that. So I was kind of fighting with myself with what I wanted to do with the top. So you can see that the top of Anna's bodice has gold, like a gold bias tape on the top. And I didn't know if I wanted to do like a bias tape on the top or something like that. So what I ended up doing, actually, instead of doing a bias tape, was I traced out the shape of the top of the bodice and I cut out that strip in that shape, and then I would pin that strip to the top and then sew it and then flip it right sides up so it was connected to the top, which you'll see me do, so it'll make a bit more sense in a second. And then once all of those were all sewn, I could sew the pieces together. So right sides together, I just sewed along the top, and that would give me that nice gold trim at the top, and I was happy with it. I forgot, before I sewed them together, I did add some boning to the outer piece actually. So I started with hand sewing some bias taped boning onto the like seams, and then I got lazy and then I ended up hot gluing them onto the seams, which turned out fine. Don't worry, it worked. Just don't tell me about it. So yeah, it got 4 boning onto the seams, and then I did hot glue a boning onto the center front so that the point would stay down. Don't hate me for it, I did it. You won't tell that it's there, don't worry. So after I did that, then I sewed the 2 pieces together. Then once the 2 pieces were sewn together, I folded in the side edges twice to hide the raw edges, and then also give me a channel for the boning, and then channel for the grommets. So after I added the boning into the back sides, it was ready for the bottom bias tape, which is also gold. So I did use that same gold that I used for the top to make a bias tape to add to the bottom. And then once the bias tape was added, I just went ahead and I added the grommets. So I'm gonna see you after all of that. I would like to issue a sneaky boy danger noodle warning. If you do not like snakes, then don't look at the next clip for like a minute, and then you'll be good. Thank you for the danger noodle break. We will now be going back to our regularly scheduled sewing. Now it was time for the little strappy sleeves. So hers, you'll see in other like renditions that a lot of the time they'll have the sleeves up, but I wanted to do it more like hers where they drape off the shoulder. And also with how structured this bodice was, I didn't really need the straps for the top to stay up. So I wanted to make them droopy. So I pretty much just kind of cut out, so like I said, I did have some other satin that was like really pretty and I only had like this much of, but it was perfect for the sleeve. It's this beautiful dark green, like emerald satin. So I used that and I basically just cut out like a little kind of shape. You'll see what it looks like. So I cut out two for each sleeve, so it wouldn't just be one layer, it was two sewn together. So once I cut them out, I placed a lace down the bottom because you can see hers does have like a green lace, but all I had was a white. So I did place a lace down on the bottom to be sandwiched and sewn in between. And then I laid the other piece right sides together, and then I sewed along the top and the bottom. Once those were sewed, I turned them right sides out, ironed them, and then so this was a bit of trial and error, so I did gather the ends of them to give it that kind of like drapey, wrinkly kind of look that hers has. So I gathered the ends, and what I ended up doing was I did hand sew these onto the inside of the top gold piece. So I hand sewed the two front pieces on to the top bodice piece, but where the trial and error came was I found it was a bit too long. So instead of like recutting it or anything, I basically just regathered it away from the edge, and that kind of gave me the same shape. And then I just chopped it and sewed it onto the back. So that was a little sketchy, but it turned out looking really good. So yeah, that was the sleeves. And then the last part is for painting. So again, what I did was I traced out the general shape of the bodice piece, and this is just half of the bodice because I wanted to be able to mirror it instead of matching my drawing. So I drew out the little stencil and cut it out with an X-Acto knife and just blotted on paint with a paintbrush, and that gave me my design on the front. I know that people generally will embroider with an embroidery machine, but I don't have one, or they'll just use like other appliques, but I didn't really feel like doing that because I wanted this to be like the most movie accurate that I can make it. So I think this technique worked out actually really well, and you can hardly tell that it's paint. Like, it looks pretty good in my opinion. So yeah, with that, I think we're all done. So I guess I'll see you in the final look. I kid you not, I just had to answer my front door fully dressed as Anna. I was literally setting things up to do my outro, and then someone knocked on the door and I had to answer the door as Anna. Oh, that was my worst nightmare confirmed. Aside from that, I could not be happier with this dress and how it all turned out. This just turned out so much better than I thought it was going to, and it's beautiful. Like, I haven't had something this like good that I've made in such a long time. So I am so happy that it turned out, and I made the pattern myself too. Like, incredible. I think the painting turned out really great, especially like this skirt alone took like 16 hours. So this whole dress took quite some time. But like everything just turned out so freaking well. I think all in all I might have spent, let's see, I spent like $20 to $25 on just the white satin. And then if this green was thrifted, that might have been like $5 to $8. This was on clearance for maybe like $5. Same with this, and then this was a whole sheet, so that was like maybe $80. So considering all of that, I didn't spend like a crazy amount on this costume, which is really good because there's a lot of like, I don't know, I just like to be, I'm cheap and I like to be sustainable, but I had like such a hyperfixation on this that I had to go out and buy some fabric for it, which I don't generally do, which you know, but I had to because I really wanted to do it, and I wanted to like dive into something, you know. I just haven't done something so big in such a long time, and I really wanted to do something like this, and oh my god, it turned out so well. No promises that I'll be doing something big like this anytime soon. Again, I just don't like to buy fabric. So if I were to do like Cinderella or like Aurora or something, I would end up likely having to go out and buy fabric, which I don't want to do. So probably not something big like this for a while. But let me know what you do want to see. I love putting things over hoop skirts. This is another big thing for me. And it just turned out so good. Yeah, so just let me know what you want to see more of. I think I'll take definitely a chiller week next week, unless another hyperfixation just happens upon me with like this one, and then my brain just goes pew. That's the ADHD talking. So yeah, I very much hope you liked what I did with this. I could not be happier. This is like my peak at this point. I think this is one of my favorite things that I've done, probably the best thing that I've done, and the most work that I've put into something. So I just overall am ecstatic. Also, cannot believe I had to answer the door in the dress. Oh my god. Worst fears confirmed. It was horrible. Okay, so well, anywho to do, if you liked what I did, go ahead and like and subscribe. I post most Saturdays, mostly at noon. I will see you in my next video. Thank you for watching.